Hello, virtual biology students. It's Mrs. Capra here to talk about lab safety today. And you may be wondering, why do we need to know about lab safety if we're doing biology in virtual school? Well, this is a presentation that will also help you just in basic general life, keeping safe in the kitchen or in the workplace environment. So it's important to always listen to or read the instructions carefully before attempting to do any kind of lab activity. And even though you may not want to, it's important to wear safety goggles to protect your eyes from chemicals. You only have two eyes and you want to make sure that they stay safe. Heated materials and other things that could shatter and hurt your eyes are definitely something you want to stay safe from. And of course, you'll want to notify your teacher if you see any spills or accidents. After handling chemicals, you should always wash your hands with soap and water, even if you're just around your house cleaning and then you go to, say, put your contact lenses in or something. You can learn the hard way. If you don't properly wash your hands with soap and water, you're going to be in for a chemical burn. So those are things to kind of keep in mind. During your lab work, you're going to want to keep your hands away from your face and tie back your long hair. Roll up those loose sleeves. Know where your fire extinguishers, fire blankets, eye wash stations, and first aid kits are. Those are really important things to know. Also, you're going to want to keep your work area uncluttered and take only what's necessary to your lab station. It's suggested that you wear glasses rather than contacts, and you may think, well, why? And the answer is easy. When you have contact lenses in, that's one more thing that you will have to get out of your eye. Of course, a chemical can also become trapped underneath your contact lens and cause major, major discomfort. Also, you're going to want to make sure you don't put anything into your mouth, even like biting your fingernails during an experiment. Clean up your area after your lab is done, and just don't play around in the lab. It's always important to not play any kind of practical jokes or anything like that during lab time. If you have glassware that's chipped or cracked, just don't even use it. Just bring it to your teacher. Any broken glassware, we just need to dispose of that in the special glass disposal. And if you're pouring liquids into glassware, make sure that you're pouring it into a container that's resting on a table, and that's at least a hand's breadth from the edge of the table. Also, you'll want to make sure that you use a glass stirring rod and pour your chemical down the glass stirring rod to prevent liquids from splattering back up towards your face. If a piece of glassware gets broken, don't try to clean it up by yourself. Just get your teacher. And then if you're inserting glass tubing into a rubber stopper, make sure to apply lubricant like glycerin to the glass and use a twisting motion so it doesn't break. Also, you'll want to make sure that you don't place hot glassware in water. That rapid cooling can also make the glass shatter, causing damage to you. And then, of course, chemical safety. You're going to want to wear those goggles and never mix chemicals together unless you're told to do so. Of course, just use common sense. Don't taste any chemicals. You should never taste anything in the lab. You'll remember you were taught to waft the fumes towards your nose with one hand. Don't put your nose right over the container and inhale. And never pour water into a concentrated acid. Acid should be poured slowly into the water. Follow the instructions of your teacher when you're disposing of chemicals. You don't want to just wash something down the sink. That can also be harmful, especially when it gets into the sewage. That can be a bad thing. And of course, wash your hands after handling any hazardous chemicals. As far as electrical safety goes, you're going to want to make sure to lay electrical cords where no one can trip on them or get caught. And be sure your hands and your lab area are dry before using electrical equipment. You don't want to poke anything into electrical outlets. You'll also want to unplug cords by pulling the plug and not the cord, and unplug all electrical equipment at the end of your lab period. This goes for even just using your kitchen. Unplug that toaster when you're done using it. Unplug, your blender when you're done using it. Those types of things are just typical life safety skills. As far as heating goes, you're going to want to let your burners and hot plates cool down before you touch them. and use tongs or protective gloves to handle hot objects. You don't ever want to reach across an open flame or a burner. Just common sense. Hanging clothes down can, cause a fire. Heating safety continued here. You're always going to want to use the glassware that is able to be heated safely. It's either branded as Kymax or Pyrex. And always point the top ends of test tubes that are being heated away from people. When you're heating a test tube, you're going to want to move it around slowly over the flame to distribute the heat evenly. Only glassware that's thoroughly dry should be heated, and you're going to want to use a platform with a ring stand to heat glassware with on a wire gauze. You don't want to hold it in your hand. And when you're lighting a burner, you're going to want to wait until the striker is in place before you turn on the gas. The amount of air can be adjusted by the air supply valve below the tube of the burner, and that's going to help to regulate the flame temperature and color. You don't ever want to leave one of these burners unattended though. Just make sure that you're always nearby. If something were to happen like a burn, you're going to want to immediately flush with cold water until that burning sensation goes away or it's lessened. If you have a cut or a bruise, you're going to want to make sure to just not touch an open wound without safety gloves, and pressing directly on a minor cut is going to help to stop the bleeding in a few minutes, and you'll want to just go ahead and apply a cold compress to bruises if you have one to reduce swelling. And then, of course, if somebody were to faint, you're going to want to try to get that person to fresh air and have them recline so that their head is lower than the rest of their body. And if there were something to get into your eyes, flush it immediately with lots of water for several minutes. If something foreign is lodged in your eye, don't try to rub it. That's only going to be able to scratch the surface of your eye, the cornea, and that will hurt really bad. As far as poisoning goes, you want to try to find out if there was a substance that was responsible and let your teacher know. And then, of course, any kind of spill on the skin, you're going to want to flush with a lot of water. If you have an acid spill, you can apply baking soda, a solution of baking soda. And if you have a base spill, you can neutralize that by applying a vinegar solution. And then also, if an electrical shock occurs, you can shut off the current, of course, at the source and remove the wire with rubber gloves. We know that rubber will not conduct electricity. And of course, that's something that you should probably just reach out to your teacher with. So just take a look at some of these pictures. I want you to identify what is wrong with each of these pictures. And I'm going to give you just a second to look at each one. And you can always go back by scrolling back in the video. And then I want you to also take a look at these statements and tell me what's wrong with these statements. So if you could go ahead and take a look at the pictures and the statements and complete the assignment, letting me know what is wrong with each of those statements, you will earn full credit for this assignment.